The Intersystem Combat Academy floated in the neutral zone between the Andromeda and Triangulum galaxies, a massive structure of gleaming metal and crystalline domes that housed the most prestigious military training program in known space. For 3,000 years, warriors from 700 species had passed through its corridors, learning the refined arts of modern combat. Energy shields, plasma disruptors, graviton manipulators, quantum phase blades. These were the tools of civilized warfare. The kind of warfare that didn't leave messy holes in starship hulls, or, more importantly, didn't violate the Treaty of Kronos-7. The treaty, signed after the projectile wars had devastated 43 star systems, was simple. No chemically propelled weapons, no magnetically accelerated projectiles, no kinetic bombardment devices. The galaxy had collectively decided that hurling metal at high velocities was barbaric, inefficient, and frankly embarrassing for species that had mastered faster-than-light travel. It was like showing up to a diplomatic summit in animal skins. Technically functional, historically significant, utterly inappropriate. Which made the current situation in Combat Theory Hall absolutely fascinating. The lecture hall stretched upward in a dizzying spiral, with seats arranged in a three-dimensional helix that accommodated species ranging from the floating gas bags of Helios Prime to the 17-legged creche who needed extra floor space. Holographic displays flickered throughout the chamber, showing real-time combat simulations from various fronts across the galactic arm. It was the kind of room designed to make you feel simultaneously inspired and insignificant, which was precisely the point of military education. Instructor Vexthor stood at the central podium, his forearms crossed in what every species recognized as the universal gesture of profound disappointment. He was a Kelrathi, 7 feet of chitinous plating and compound eyes that could track 47 independent targets simultaneously. His species had been fighting wars since humans were figuring out which end of a stick was pointy. He took combat seriously. He took regulations seriously. He took the Treaty of Kronos-7 very, very seriously. "I will say this once," Vexthor announced, his voice carrying through the translation matrix with perfect clarity. "The final examination will test your competency with approved modern weaponry. Energy-based systems, nanomolecular disruptors, or approved melee implements with proper safety certifications. What you will not bring to my arena are relics from your species' primitive past." A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the assembled cadets. 300 students from 40 different worlds, all nodding along like this was a perfectly reasonable statement. Which it was, mostly. "The Treaty of Kronos-7 exists for a reason," Vexthor continued, warming to his favorite subject. "Projectile weapons are illegal, dangerous, and demonstrate a fundamental lack of sophistication. They require ammunition. They have recoil. They jam. They are, in every measurable way, inferior to modern combat systems. In the third tier, sitting between a crystalline Zephron and a hulking Draknor mercenary, a human cadet listened with the kind of attention that looked respectful, but was actually calculating something entirely different. Corporal Maya Chen, recent transfer from Earth's Expeditionary Academy, had heard this speech before, roughly 17 times in the past 4 months. She'd also spent those 4 months reading the Treaty of Kronos-7, all 3,000 pages of it, including the appendices, including the footnotes in the appendices. She was definitely the only person in the entire academy who had done that. Maya had joined the Intersystem Combat Academy with a simple goal: prove that humanity belonged among the galactic military elite. Earth was still the new kid on the cosmic block, barely 2 centuries into faster-than-light travel, while some of these species had been exploring the stars for millennia. Humans were viewed with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. Interesting little primates who'd figured out fusion, but still hadn't evolved beyond binocular vision. She intended to change that perception, just not in the way anyone expected. Your final combat examination will take place in 3 cycles, Vexthor announced. You will face opponents drawn randomly from your class tier. Victory requires either incapacitation, submission, or forcing your opponent outside the arena boundary. Lethal force is prohibited by Academy regulations and will result in immediate expulsion and criminal charges. The Draknor next to Maya snorted, which sounded like a diesel engine clearing its throat. Easy victory. Human soft, human slow. Maya smiled without looking at him. We'll see. The crystalline Zephron on her other side chimed musically, which the translator rendered as, "Please do not take offense. Greshk has never fought a human. He does not understand your species' capacity for what you call stubbornness." "Stubbornness is our primary export," Maya replied. "That and entertainment media." Over the next 2 cycles, the Academy buzzed with preparation. The combat arena, a massive circular platform surrounded by energy barriers and observation decks, became the center of everyone's attention. Cadets practiced with their chosen weapons, showing off for potential scouts from elite military units. The Zephrons demonstrated their ability to refract energy beams through their crystalline bodies, turning themselves into mobile prisms of death. The Kelrathi displayed martial arts that looked like a ballet performed by armored tanks. The Heliophants from the gas giant colonies brought gravity manipulators that could crush opponents without ever making physical contact. Maya, meanwhile, visited the Academy's historical archive. The archive keeper, an ancient Libroth named Keeper Zaris, whose species lived for 800 years and forgot nothing, looked up from his data terminals with surprise when the human cadet entered. "Corporal Chen, this is unexpected. Most combat students avoid the archives unless forced to research tactical history." "I need access to weapons from Earth's medieval period," Maya said. "Specifically European designs from approximately 1000 to 1200 AD. Zaris's eye stalks twisted in confusion. "Those would be in the Primitive Armaments Collection, Section 7G, Terran Subcategory. May I ask why you require weapons from humanity's pre-industrial era?" "Academic curiosity. The final examination is in 1 cycle. Very urgent academic curiosity." Zaris studied her for a long moment, then made a decision that he would later describe to colleagues as either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. "Vault access granted. Please do not damage any exhibits. Some of those artifacts are older than my great-grandmother, and she attended the signing of the Treaty of Kronos-7. The vault was climate-controlled and dimly lit, with weapons from thousands of worlds displayed in careful arrangement. Swords from the Plasma Wars, axes from the Kresh Rebellion, spears from conflicts so ancient that the stars involved had since gone nova. And, in a small, almost apologetic corner, Earth weapons, bronze swords, Roman gladi, Viking axes, samurai katanas, and there, in a preservation field, exactly what Maya had been searching for, a medieval crossbow, circa 1100 AD, recovered from a castle excavation in what had been France. The design was elegant in its simplicity. A wooden stock, a steel bow, a trigger mechanism that would have been cutting-edge engineering 1,000 years ago and was now displayed like a child's toy. Maya signed the requisition form, listing the crossbow as a historical demonstration prop for cultural studies. This was technically true. She was definitely going to demonstrate something cultural. Keeper Zaris approved it without a second glance, because who would possibly try to use a primitive weapon in a modern combat examination? The night before the finals, Maya sat in her quarters with the crossbow disassembled on her desk. The weapon was functional. The archive kept everything in working condition, but it needed adjustment. She'd spent weeks training in the zero-gravity combat simulators, calculating trajectory adjustments, practicing reload speeds. A modern crossbow would have been easier, but those had advanced materials, composite designs, and modern engineering. They were, arguably, too advanced. This crossbow was wood and steel, held together with iron pins. It was powered by nothing but bent metal and human muscle. It was, by any reasonable standard, obsolete. It was also not mentioned anywhere in the Treaty of Kronos-7. The next morning, Combat Arena 7 filled with spectators. The final examinations were public events, partly for tradition and partly because the Academy, charged admission and funding, was always tight. The stands held a mixture of students, instructors, military observers, and curious civilians who enjoyed watching young warriors fight in controlled environments. It was part sporting event, part demonstration of cutting-edge combat theory. The early matches went exactly as expected. A Kelrathi warrior overwhelmed a Zephron with superior close-quarters combat. A Heliophant used gravity manipulation to literally push a Drachnor out of the arena without ever touching him. Energy shields crackled against plasma weapons. Quantum blades phased through conventional defenses. It was the impressive display of modern warfare, where battles were decided by technology, training, and split-second tactical decisions. Then Maya's name appeared on the display board. She walked to the equipment preparation area carrying a long cloth-wrapped bundle. Around her, other cadets checked their weapons, energy cells fully charged, safety protocols engaged, neural interfaces calibrated. Maya unwrapped her bundle. The preparation area went silent. Instructor Vexthor materialized beside her with the speed of someone who'd been monitoring the cameras and had immediately teleported over. All four of his arms were now uncrossed and gesticulating wildly. "What is that?" "A crossbow, sir." Maya began attaching the steel bow to the wooden stock with practiced efficiency. "That is a projectile weapon." "It's a mechanically propelled tension device, sir." "It projects things, violently, at opponents." The Treaty of Kronos-7, Article 4, Section 12, specifically prohibits chemically propelled projectile weapons and magnetically accelerated kinetic systems. Maya pulled out a datapad and displayed the exact text. A crossbow uses neither chemical propulsion nor magnetic acceleration. It employs mechanical tension stored in bent steel. That's basic potential energy conversion, sir. Physics, not chemistry. Vexthor's compound eyes somehow managed to convey the emotion of a person whose entire worldview was being attacked by technicalities. The spirit of the treaty. With respect, sir, the treaty is 3,000 pages long specifically because the drafters didn't want to rely on spirit. They wanted precision. They wanted every possible weapon system explicitly defined. Maya held up the datapad. "I've read the entire document, twice. There are 47 prohibited categories of projectile weapons. Crossbows aren't mentioned in any of them." A crowd had gathered now. Other instructors drawn by the commotion. Senior cadets who smelled drama. Keeper Zaris, who appeared from somewhere looking both proud and terrified. "The intent was clearly to ban all projectile weapons," Vexthor insisted. "Then they should have written that, sir." Maya loaded a blunt-tipped bolt into the crossbow's channel. The bolts were regulation, foam-tipped training projectiles that would hurt but not seriously injure. Instead, they spent 800 pages categorizing specific propulsion methods. Chemical explosives, magnetic coils, graviton accelerators, plasma ejection systems, compressed gas mechanisms, even exotic things like quantum tunneling projectiles. They were very thorough. Except for medieval tension weapons, Keeper Zaris added helpfully. Those weren't used in any spacefaring conflicts, so the treaty authors didn't consider them relevant. Vexthor looked like he wanted to use all 4 arms to tear something apart, possibly the Treaty of Kronos-7 itself. This is absurd. This is accurate, Maya countered. The treaty prohibits what it prohibits. Everything else is permitted by default. That's basic legal interpretation, sir. Null poena sine lege. No punishment without law. Someone in the crowd laughed. Actually laughed. A senior instructor from the tactical theory department, a wizened archon named Kelmos, who was older than most planetary civilizations. The human is correct, Vexthor. The treaty has a loophole. An ancient, ridiculous loophole, but a legitimate one. I will file a formal protest, Vexthor announced. You can file it after the examination, Kelmos replied. Rules are rules, even when they're stupid. Especially when they're stupid. That's what separates us from pirates. Vexithor made a sound like metal grinding on metal, which was the Kelrathi equivalent of a defeated sigh. Fine. Fine. But if that weapon causes injury beyond regulation parameters, Corporal Chen, you will be expelled and possibly prosecuted. Understood, sir. I've calibrated for non-lethal impacts only. And if you lose this match, you fail the examination and your military career is over. Also understood, sir. Maya stepped into the arena. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Word was spreading about the human with a primitive weapon. On the opposite side of the arena, her opponent materialized. Of course it was Greshk. The universe had a sense of humor. The Draknor was 8 feet of reptilian muscle and natural armor plating, carrying a plasma disruptor that could melt through 6 inches of standard hull plating. He looked at Maya's crossbow and began laughing, a sound like boulders falling down a mountain. Human brings toy to real fight, Greshk announced. This will be very quick. The referee, a neutral AI with no stake in anyone's victory, announced the rules. Combat will continue until submission, incapacitation, or ring out. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical teams are standing by. Combatants, take your positions. Maya raised the crossbow to her shoulder, sighting down the length of the stock. The weapon was heavy, awkward compared to modern arms. No electronic sights, no automatic targeting, no neural interface. Just wood, steel, and geometry from an era when humans were still figuring out that germs existed. Begin. Greshk charged immediately, plasma disruptor raised. It was a solid strategy. Close the distance, overwhelm the opponent with superior firepower and strength. Against most opponents, it would have worked. Maya squeezed the trigger. The crossbow's release mechanism clicked. The steel bow straightened with sudden force, transferring all its stored energy to the bolt in a fraction of a second. The projectile flew across the arena at roughly 250 feet per second, pathetically slow by modern weapon standards, barely faster than a human could throw. But Greshk wasn't dodging. Why would he? He'd never fought anyone using a projectile weapon before. Energy weapons moved at the speed of light and required shields or evasion. This thing was moving at speeds his visual cortex could actually track. He tried to track it. That was his mistake. The bolt hit him directly in the center mass, foam tips spreading the impact across his chest plates. The force wasn't enough to damage his armor, but it was enough to disrupt his charge, making him stumble half a step. Maya was already reloading. Her hands moved in a practiced rhythm. Draw the string back using the goat's foot lever, lock it in place, load a new bolt. 5 seconds. which was an eternity in modern combat, but was apparently fast enough for this. Greshk fired his plasma disruptor. A bolt of superheated ions screamed across the arena. Maya wasn't where he'd aimed. She'd moved the instant after firing, because unlike energy weapons that moved at light speed, her crossbow didn't announce its firing trajectory with glowing charge-up effects. She fired again. This bolt caught Greshk in the shoulder joint, where his armor plates met. He roared in surprise more than pain. The foam tips were regulation safe, but the impact forced him to adjust his stance. The crowd was silent now. This wasn't going according to script. "Hold still, human!" Greshk bellowed, firing again. Another plasma bolt went punt as Maya rolled behind a low barrier. The arena was designed with obstacles to make fights more interesting. "Tactical disadvantage," Maya called out. "Your weapon requires line of sight and telegraphs every shot with a 2-second charge cycle. My weapon is already loaded when you see me." She demonstrated by popping up from a different angle and putting a bolt into Greshk's knee joint. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to make him feel it. Greshk was learning now, raising his shield generator. A shimmering energy barrier formed in front of him. Standard anti-energy weapon defense. He advanced more carefully, using the shield to protect his approach. Maya aimed and fired. The bolt passed straight through the energy shield and hit Greshk in the chest. The entire arena gasped. Even Vexthor, who had been watching with the grim satisfaction of someone expecting vindication, made a strangled sound. "Energy shields don't stop physical projectiles," Maya explained, reloading again. "They're calibrated for plasma, lasers, particle beams. They create electromagnetic interference to disperse energy weapons. A solid object moving at subsonic speeds doesn't interact with the field at all." Greshk looked down at his useless shield generator, then at the human with the ancient weapon, then at his plasma disruptor. The gears were visibly turning in his head, calculating something he had never had to calculate before. How to fight an opponent who ignored all his defensive advantages. "This is cheating," he decided. "This is adaptation," Maya countered, "also known as tactics." Greshk roared and charged again, abandoning strategy for pure aggression. Maya backpedaled, firing twice more, one bolt to the advancing knee to disrupt his stride, one to the weapon hand to spoil his aim. Greshk's return fire went high, plasma bolts scorching the arena ceiling. The match became a dance. Greshk had superior strength, durability, and firepower. Maya had mobility, unpredictability, and a weapon system that bypassed every defense in his arsenal. Energy shields were useless. Armor plating only helped if the bolt didn't hit a joint. His plasma disruptor was devastating, but required time to charge and clear line of sight. Maya's crossbow required neither. She led him around the arena, using obstacles for cover, forcing him to chase while she controlled the engagement distance. Every time he got close, a bolt would catch him somewhere uncomfortable. Elbow joint, hip, knee, once in the throat, which made his shield entirely academic. The foam tips prevented real damage, but the cumulative effect was wearing him down. "Stand and fight," Greshk demanded. "I am fighting. You're just losing." Maya planted a bolt in his foot. The problem with overwhelming force is that it requires deployment. Greshk was built for direct combat, for smashing through opposition with superior power. Maya wasn't giving him anything to smash. She was death by 1,000 cuts, each one minor but cumulative, each one forcing him to adjust, to compensate, to think about things he'd never had to think about before. Like the fact that his plasma disruptor had limited battery life, and he'd been firing wild shots for 5 minutes. The weapon powered down with a dying whine. Greshk stared at it in disbelief, then looked at Maya, who had another bolt loaded and ready. "You can yield," Maya offered. Tactical surrender is permitted under combat regulations. For a moment, it looked like Greshk might charge her anyway, trying to end the fight with bare hands and superior strength. Then he looked at the distance between them, at the loaded crossbow, at his own fatigue from being used as target practice. Human fights with honor, he admitted. Greshk yields. The arena erupted, not in applause, that would come later, but in shocked conversation. 300 students and instructors all trying to process what they'd just witnessed. A human cadet with a 1,000-year-old weapon had defeated a superior opponent using pure tactical innovation and a loophole in the most important treaty in galactic history. Instructor Vexthor descended to the arena floor, all four arms still trying to find something to grab onto in this new reality where medieval weapons were apparently effective against modern combat systems. That was highly irregular. That was legal, Kelmos called from the observation deck. And frankly fascinating. The human exploited every mechanical disadvantage of modern weapon systems. Energy shields, charge cycles, targeting predictability, all designed to counter other modern weapons. Against a pre-spaceflight projectile system, they're ineffective. The treaty will be amended, Vexthor promised darkly. Probably, Maya agreed, slinging the crossbow over her shoulder. But until then, the loophole exists. And I passed the examination. You did more than pass. Kelmos descended from the observation deck, moving with the slow dignity of extreme age. You demonstrated something these young warriors needed to see. Modern technology is powerful, but doctrine becomes dogma if left unquestioned. The Treaty of Kronos-7 was written by species who assumed projectile weapons were obsolete. They forgot that obsolete doesn't mean ineffective, just unfamiliar. Over the next few cycles, Maya Chen became something of a celebrity at the Academy. Some species respected her tactical innovation. Others considered her victory a fluke that exploited legal technicalities rather than real skill. The Draknor, surprisingly, adopted her into their warrior culture with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for people who defeated them in honorable combat. Greshk himself became her unlikely friend, mostly because he wanted to learn how to fight against projectile weapons, and she was the only person in the academy who could teach him. Human weapons are strange, he admitted during a training session, watching Maya reload the crossbow. Slow, mechanical, require strength and timing. That's what makes them unpredictable, Maya explained. Modern weapons are designed for efficiency and standardization. Everyone trains the same way, fights the same way, expects the same tactics. This thing, she patted the crossbow, is from an era when every weapon was unique and every fight was different. Is powerful lesson, Greshk acknowledged. Greshk tell all Draknor warriors, learn old ways. Old ways still work when new ways fail. The Treaty of Kronos-7 was indeed amended 3 months later, following emergency sessions by the Galactic Military Commission. Article 4, Section 12, Subsection F, now specifically included. Mechanical tension projectile systems, including but not limited to crossbows, catapults, ballistas, trebuchets, and any similar pre-industrial kinetic launchers. Maya framed a copy of the amendment and hung it in her quarters. Underneath, she added a handwritten note. They had to look up what a trebuchet was. At her graduation ceremony, she received high honors in tactical innovation and creative problem-solving. Instructor Vexthor presented her medal with all 4 hands, which was the Kelrathi equivalent of grudging respect. "You exploited a loophole, Corporal Chen," he said formally. "I identified a legal oversight and adapted accordingly, sir," Maya replied. "Your tactics were unconventional." "My tactics were effective, sir." "You brought a medieval weapon to a modern combat examination." I brought the right tool for the specific job, sir. Vexithor's compound eyes fixed on her for a long moment. You will either become the greatest tactical innovator in modern military history, or you will cause so many regulatory nightmares that future generations will curse your name. Maya smiled. Why not both, sir? Dismissed, Lieutenant Chen. Lieutenant. The promotion had come through specifically because of her performance at the examination, apparently making the entire Galactic Military Commission rewrite their founding treaty, qualified as demonstrating initiative. As Maya left the academy for her first posting, a frigate attached to the exploration fleet, where unconventional thinking was actually encouraged, she passed by the historical archive one last time. Keeper Zaris waited at the entrance with a knowing expression. I suppose you'll want to return the crossbow, he said. Actually, I was hoping to keep it, for historical research purposes. The same historical research purposes that won you a combat examination? Exactly those purposes, yes. Zaris's eye stalks twisted in what might have been amusement. The Academy has decided to create a new display in the main hall. Artifacts of significant tactical innovation. Your crossbow will be the centerpiece, right next to a plaque explaining how a human lieutenant exploited the greatest legal loophole in military treaty history. I'd prefer to keep the original, Maya said, for practical reasons. In case you need to exploit another loophole? In case someone needs a reminder that old solutions sometimes work better than new ones. Zaris considered this, then made a decision that would later be described as either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. I'll log it as on permanent loan for field research. Do try not to start another projectile war. No promises, Keeper. 3 weeks later, Lieutenant Maya Chen reported to her new posting aboard the frigate Swift Current. The crew was mixed species, mostly young officers looking for adventure on the frontier. The captain, a grizzled Archon named Torval, who'd been commanding exploratory vessels since before Earth discovered fire, looked at her personnel file with interest. I've read about you, Torval said. The crossbow incident. I prefer to think of it as the crossbow innovation, sir. Every treaty lawyer in the Galactic Corps wants your head on a pike. I've received some strongly worded communications, sir. Good. Torval smiled, which looked disturbing on an Archon's crystalline face. That means you know how to think differently. Out here on the frontier, different thinking keeps you alive. Standard doctrine is for standard situations. We encounter non-standard situations every other Tuesday. I look forward to the challenge, sir. I'm sure you do, Lieutenant. Just one question. Do you have any other ancient human weapons I should know about? Maya's expression remained carefully neutral. Define ancient, sir. Torval laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. You're going to fit in perfectly. And she did. The galaxy learned, slowly, and sometimes painfully, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or strength or even their much-vaunted stubbornness. It was their ability to look at rules, regulations, and established doctrine and ask one simple question. But what if we didn't? The Treaty of Kronos-7 continued to be amended regularly over the following decades, always patching holes that some inventive human had discovered and exploited. Siege weapons, slings, blowguns, boomerangs, and in one memorable incident, a Roman-style onager that technically classified as an artillery placement device, rather than a personal weapon and therefore fell under completely different regulations. The Galactic Military Commission eventually created a special sub-department whose sole purpose was reviewing human historical military developments and preemptively adding them to the prohibited weapons list. They called it the Historical Warfare Analysis Division. Everyone else called it the What Did Humans Invent Now department. But in the archives of the Intersystem Combat Academy, preserved in a place of honor, one medieval crossbow remained on display. The plaque beneath it read, "Proof that sometimes the oldest solutions are the ones nobody saw coming." And in smaller text, added later by Instructor with a sense of humor, also proof that humans read the fine print.